I'm a big fan. We kind of talked about this throughout the conversation, but also earlier in a safe way, but exposing people to adversity and challenges. The teachers I remember are the ones who kicked my butt in school. Mr. Perry, 10th grade biology. Like I didn't think I was going to get out, and I was so happy with a B plus. And I couldn't tell you a look about biology today, but it was the experience of working hard through adversity, not for that subject matter, but as a basis for the next time I faced adversity.
Welcome to the Superintendent's Hangout, where we discuss topics in education, charter schools, life in general, and not necessarily in that order. I'm your host, Dr. Sharetta. Come on in and hang out. In this episode, I was privileged and honored to sit down for a conversation with Beau James. Beau is currently Director and Associate General Counsel for Mobile and Artificial Intelligence at Meta. Prior to his current position, Beau worked for 10 years at Qualcomm as a senior counsel. Prior to that, for Turner Broadcasting System, Delta Airlines, and other nationally known companies. Beau is a graduate of the University of San Diego Law School, and prior to that, University of California, Berkeley. Beau and I touched on a wide range of topics, from his legal career, his upbringing, his passion for advocacy in the area of rare diseases, and the personal story behind that passion, and much, much more. I hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as I did creating it with a very inspirational leader and a friend of mine, Beau James. I thought we would start with your origin story, which is where I start all of the episodes on this podcast, because it's important, I think, for listeners to understand where the guests come from, what it was like for them growing up, what were the forces that shaped their trajectory and have brought them to the present moment.
I love the question. I love the use of the word origin. I think so many times you meet people and they say, or you talk to people like, what do you do? What's your job? And I think origin goes a little bit deeper. For myself, to kind of describe my origin, I have to talk about my parents. I think it starts there. My mom, Elizabeth, she was an Army brat, born right after the war, lived in Mississippi, lived in Japan, lived all over the South. And at about 18, she moved to Fort Scott, Kansas to become a nurse. She'll tell the story. I was a little black girl making 50 cents an hour as a nurse's aide. She met my dad there in Kansas. They moved out to California. And over a span of like 30 years, my mom raised us kids with my dad, and she retired as a nursing executive for a major hospital system here. And my mom always talked about being a manager, what it's like in corporate America. Yeah, that's kind of her story. My dad grew up in a lot of places, graduated from high school in Santa Monica, went to college, Kansas, KU, let me get it right. Lived in Seattle for a while. He was a probation officer. He retired after 30 years here in LA County. He was one of the first groups to go off and join the Peace Corps. So in the 60s, he was in West Africa, very worldly person, committed to his family. So those are my parents. I have a younger sister, Dawn. She's a geologist. She does a lot of climate work right now for a big consulting firm. When I was first born, I was, up through probably about, I don't know how old I was, but we first lived in Santa Monica, small apartment. Then my parents moved us to Inglewood. I was in Inglewood until about 8th grade, if you will. Started school at an elementary school called Parent. Wasn't quite in Inglewood, it was a little bit outside. I took the bus there. I was kind of bus to Parent. I remember there. I was there until about 2nd grade. And then around 2nd grade, halfway through 2nd grade, my mom moved me to Seeds UES. I don't know if you know that school, Karine Seeds. It's known as the lab school now. So this was an experimental school attached to UCLA, if you will.
Oh, wow.
And so super fortunate. It's a school that sits in the middle of this forest in Westwood, and you have these wide open classrooms. One of your podcasts, you're talking about how you walk into a classroom and you give the thumbs up or thumbs down based on the amount of materials on the wall. That resonates with me. This place was clean.
Hmm.
And you had teachers coming out of the School of Education, like not quite experimenting, but using the latest techniques on kids. And so it was a great, great place to learn. Went to Crossroads for middle school, graduated from Santa Monica High School for high school. So eighth grade, we moved to Santa Monica, moved out of Inglewood. Um, High school, ran track for school, played a little football, played a little soccer. Um, wasn't quite intellectually curious, I would say, but school wasn't super difficult, and I just kind of went through it. When it came time to make decisions for college, I look back after sent my first kid to college and how competitive and difficult it is to go to college. I just kind of you know I grabbed the UC applications, picked 4 schools, and I said, well, if I get into Berkeley, it's the best school, I'll go there. Um, I was playing basketball and I met someone, and I'm like, hey, I think I should apply somewhere else. Maybe I should apply to Stanford. She's like, nah, you don't want to apply to Stanford, whatever she said. I'm like, you know what? I don't know who you are, but I agree. I'm not going to apply to Stanford. UC's, that's the way to go. Fortunately, it worked out. Went to Cal. An amazing life experience, wide open. From this kid who's growing up in Southern California to arrive there and just have the world in front of me. The only subject I really enjoyed in high school was history, so I went to Cal as a history major.
Hmm.
And I just studied everything. I had a great time. I wasn't like over the top in terms of studies, but I just really, it was, looking back on it, it was one of those classic great experience. I got to experience a lot there. After Cal, took 2 years off, wanted to work. I've been in school my whole life and hadn't experienced the real world. So I had a couple of jobs. Worked at the Gap for a little while. Remember the Gap? I worked at one of the retail stores. They had a great program where for college juniors, they would train you as an assistant manager. Oh. So when you talk about career stuff, we can look back at that moment as being very defining and very important. Worked for Pete's Coffee as an assistant manager. I managed a couple of Kaplan centers, Kaplan Education, people who do the test prep. I managed the San Francisco, Berkeley experience, kind of got my toes wet in business. Then went off to law school. I'll cut it there. We can talk career stuff, but I just got to hit you with a lot. Love any questions,
No, thank you. Thank you for that. You grew up in an interesting time in LA. Well, there's never a not interesting time in LA, right?
Yeah.
So I know you're approximately my age, so as you were talking, I'm like going back and doing mental math and trying to figure out like somewhere in there was OJ Simpson and White Bronco. Somewhere in there was somewhere in there was Northridge. A lot of tectonic shifts.
So I'll say what was probably the most defining. So when I was in high school, the gang violence, the crack epidemic in Southern California was insane. Like it was horrific. I remember being told like, hey, as a young Black man, you are a rare species in LA. You should either be dead or incarcerated. I think great parents, but I really think about my dad. So my dad is a probation officer. He worked in the camps, LA County camps. And so this is where kids would be sent, when they got in trouble, not prison, not jail, but these camps. And he would work these shifts where, he might go off to work on Friday, have to work over the weekend, and he'd come home on Monday. And so every weekend, it seemed like every week, but every weekend we'd go visit him like on Sunday. My mom would take us up to the camp where he was working. And I'd go there and I'd see these kids who weren't much older than me, like with all their freedoms taken away, just kind of off on a different path. I remember I was in this room and there was this kid, his name was Roscoe, a couple years older than me. And I remember saying to him, I was in elementary school. I remember we were talking about something. I'm like, yeah, like cursive is really hard. Like I'm having a tough time with cursive, And Roscoe was like old enough, like he would have been in high school. And he said to me, yeah, like it's really hard for me too. And I'm like, dang, like you're older than me. Like you're supposed like cursive should not be hard for you. Like just there were just these little moments. Again, having my parents there, having that great support system, but just these little moments that made it a little bit easier for me to just kind of like steer clear, like, I don't want to get in trouble. Like, I got to be a little extra careful. So
You had your own built-in scared straight program.
that's right. That's right. Let alone if I did anything, my dad would have
You
cracked
you
up.
you thought you thought your mom was taking you to see your dad, but it was
That's
a
right.
conspiracy. Like, hey,
That's exactly right.
so both your parents were in um, professions that were service professions, right? Really serving others, and not that the laws doesn't imply serving others, but there's certainly nursing is
Absolutely.
entirely service of others, and your dad to a great degree as well. What led you into the law?
As we're having this conversation, the connections are kind of coming through. But, you know, probably in high school, definitely in high school, I thought it was bizarre that you could get in trouble, serious trouble, and never have anyone explain to you how the law works. Maybe in church, thou shalt not kill, go through your 10 commandments. Maybe in school you get a little tiny bit of it, but the nuances and the complexities of the law that you can understand as a teenager, like no one ever teaches that to you. It's just like, oh, that doesn't seem right. Like that's kind of broken. So it was kind of sitting there for me. I had an uncle who was a lawyer in San Diego. I didn't know him well. He passed away when I felt relatively young, and we never had conversations, but we never talked about his work. But he was always just a very prestigious person in our family. Um, and then I think the other piece, so going to Crossroads, going to UES, I was exposed to a lot of kids who their families were much more wealthy than my family would ever be. Movie stars, let's call them captains of industry, um, had the nicest cars, and I didn't want to be broke. I was just like, you know what? And not maybe when I was first, maybe when I was in high school and college, it was like, I don't want to be broke, like from a consumer, child of the 80s, like consumer minded, but it's like, I want nice things. I think as I got older, it was much more financial flexibility. I think I'd describe it as financial independence, not, not having my debts dictate decisions that I make. Um, and for me, you know, a legal career seemed like a good path to those outcomes. Now, the reality is not every lawyer is wealthy. Not every lawyer is not in debt. I mean, when you look at the cost of law school, you look at the decisions that you make as a very young person that can impact many, many years of your life. Look at the reality. So when I was in law school, there was this statistic that only 11% of you will get to go to big law. And big law is kind of like the clearly, the predefined path to certain level of income, but not the only one. There are many other ways to do well financially in the legal profession, but that's minuscule. Like that's like, you go to a small law school. I went to USD there in San Diego for law school. You go to a small regional law school. Sometimes the odds are very much stacked against you if you're not going to a Harvard or a Yale or one of those big schools where it's kind of predefined.
Do you teach your own kids about financial planning and those sorts of things? I know I was just having a conversation with a colleague, and I always say very proudly that my daughter has started financial planning really young. Like her first summer job, she started paying into a 401k and started
Awesome.
her own Roth IRA,
Awesome.
and no one told me how to do that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And by the time at least our generation, I think, realized the power of compound interest,
Yes.
that ship had partly sailed.
That's right.
Damn thing only had half a sail by that point, right?
That's right.
Because it's driven by time, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
how do you educate your own children around
Yeah.
financial planning and not necessarily chasing dollars for the sake of chasing dollars? But I really like what you say about flexibility and independence that comes with resources.
Yes. So I wish I could say that, I sit my kids down at the dinner table and I commence the lecture because they look at me like, who the heck are you and what are you thinking, old guy? Like, isn't there work you should be doing? But it's the things I try to expose them to, the stories I try to tell them about. So my youngest son is into investing in the stock market. So I said, all right, I'm going to contribute $200 to your account. I'm going to set up your account, but here's my requirement. I want you to find companies that you're passionate about, that you use their service, go study them a little bit and come back to me and let's talk about you investing in them. That's what my dad did for me. I was an early investor in Apple. Didn't hold on to it, wish I had, but it was like that. I'm like, oh, Apple computer is amazing. My son who's off to college, he sent me a note and said, hey dad, I want to get a credit card. Why do you need a credit card? You know how I feel about debt. You know how I feel about credit. I need to, establish my credit rating. So, I've won some, I lost some. He got one. You just sign up. You sign your name. You don't have to have a job. No, then you got a credit card. But we talked. I've talked to him about my experiences with having a credit card and debt, and let's talk about what 26% interest looks like. Let's talk about when you miss a payment and the impact there, and let's compound that over time. So I try to sneak it in as lessons, but some things you have to experience yourself, and learn the lesson. So it's hard.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting process, right? As the generations shift in the way we parent our kids, and as families, ideally, hopefully, each generation kind of does a little bit better financially than the previous one, even though that trend seems to be reversing in America overall. That's a different topic, but the challenge is really to raise children in an environment where they're both appreciative and also understanding that the finances are resources that need to be cultivated and protected and nurtured.
Yes.
It's just not everybody can be a TikTok influencer and,
That's right.
and make a living from it.
That's right.
In fact, very few.
No, that's right. And I also feel that some of the best life lessons come out of failure, come out of pain, come out of not having the outcome that you expected. And so it would be great. I can swoop in there and save the day, whatnot, but what, you got to fail a little bit. You got to deal with adversity so that you build upon that going forward.
So you go to law school, and as typical law school, second year, third year, you start to narrow your focus and kind of decide kind of what you're going to do. Talk us through that process, and then how that led to your first job, and then ultimately to where you are right now in your career.
Sure. So law school was a trip for me. So I was a little bit older, in that I had worked a little while. I was accepted into the evening program at USD. I helped with costs. I could work during the day, study a little bit, kind of defer costs there. I remember my first day. I'm going to say this person's name because he lives in San Diego. I hope he hears this. Jason Oda, guy, went to UCLA. We're sitting at this fountain before the orientation, and this older gentleman walks up to us and says, what do you hope to get out of law school? And I'm like, man, I just want to survive. I have no idea what I really got myself into. I just want to survive. And Jason says, well, I'm here to do well. And I'm like, man, I thought you were my friend. What is going on? So that was the first indicator what law school is going to be about. And then the second indicator was this older gentleman who came and spoke to us turned out to be the dean. And his welcome ceremony, his welcome speech was about not just hoping to survive, but to actually thrive at USD. I'm done, man. I am done. So, so that was the welcome. You have no idea what law school's like until you actually show up there. in terms of classes that in retrospect, really, like first year is hard. It's supposed to be hard. It is one of those experiences where, hey, we're going to chew you up, we're going to break you down, and then we'll rebuild you. And that first year, that first semester is about breaking you down. I had this professor, Paul Woolman, who I will always remember. He went to Yale, and Yale law school professors are known for being the toughest. And Yale law school professors that teach he was my contracts professor. Your contracts professors, all the movies are about contracts professors. They're just brutal. And Wilmoth was known for every year making someone cry in class. And he did. My year, someone's bawling, not just crying, but just like ugly crying in the front of the room. My favorite Wilmoth, one of my favorite Wilmoth stories, you sit in this kind of amphitheater, 15 chairs, 15 seats across, and we're doing some case, and he's coming down the row, one kid at a time, one adult at a time, blowing people up. You don't know what you're talking about. Did you read it? Like just horrible. And I'm in the middle, get myself ready. I'm like, here it comes. All right, Beau, do your best. You studied, you're ready to go. He's going now. One kid. And then he skips me and keeps going down the row. And it was just like, why did he skip me? What did it go on? Like, it was mental stuff like that, just breaking you down, building you back up. But he turned out to be my favorite professor. I went back, did seminars with him, like amazing time. That was law school. I didn't enjoy it. I wanted to get out of San Diego. It was hard. It was rough. Like, I was just like, what is this? What did I get myself into? But for me, what law school really taught was you could be presented with any type of problem and know nothing about it, but you will have the tools to find an answer or a solution. For me, that was the fundamental lesson of law school. In terms of career path coming out of law school, it must have been like the spring, it must have been the spring of my first year. I was walking through the career center, past the career center, and I saw on a pillar a little piece of paper that said, I forget the name of the company. It's one of these old school brick and mortar companies back east, minority job fair. And what it was this company said to all of the DuPont minority job fair, that's what it was. DuPont had this program where they said, all of our law firms, everyone who works with us around the world, and this is revolutionary at this time. Now it's pretty common, but revolutionary at that time. Every law firm that we spend tens of millions of dollars with, we're going to sponsor a job fair, minority job fair, and we want you to come and interview different minorities that we bring through it. So I applied. I got one interview with a law firm based in San Diego. And this law firm brought two attorneys, one from Palo Alto and one from San Diego. And this was the largest law firm in San Diego. They had the two associates. And this position that I was interviewing for was for a summer, like you said, summer associate during my second year, kind of that internship that could lead to your path forward. And so for me, I look back, I remember driving up to LA. I had this old 20-year-old Honda Prelude, super reliable car, but it was my little car. I drove up to LA, downtown LA. I got my little suit on, and they had everyone who was interviewing in this holding room, this conference room. And I'm sitting there, and there are all these kids, young adults sitting around. I remember looking around the room, and I'm like, I got this. Like, they were scared. Like, they hadn't been in real interviews. Harking back to my earlier story about being a manager at the Gap. As part of that, you interview people, to hire them. And that's the best training for being interviewed, knowing how to best utilize that 20 to 30 minutes. So I went into that interview. I walked away with the opportunity to go back to the firms, the respective offices in San Diego and Palo Alto, and do a full slate of interviews. And what that is, you show up at 9 a.m, you leave late afternoon. Every 20 to 30 minutes, you're interviewing with a new attorney, and it's exhausting. You're interviewing with a new attorney, you're getting their business cards, you're writing a little note for your thank you note that you're going to send back to them afterwards. You're trying to make that connection so that you stand out beyond someone else. Everything you try to do well in an interview. I did both offices, both went well, and they said, pick one. You can't do both, but you got to pick an office. And so that would have been for the summer of 99. And so in 1999, .com explosion. And I said, like, from a historical context, like, I have to go to Palo Alto, like, hands down. Like, San Diego's great, it's beautiful, this is the largest firm, most prestigious firm in San Diego, but I've got to go to Palo Alto just because of what's happening in the world. I told them that I wanted to be a corporate associate, someone that does IPOs, does mergers and acquisitions, or an employment attorney. And no idea what that meant, what that really meant. It sounded good. I'm like, no idea what that really meant. And so that summer of 99, when I got there, when I was doing assignments and meeting attorneys, one thing I realized, and no slight on corporate attorneys, but what I realized was that they didn't understand what their clients were building. They were not steeped in the technology. They were steeped in the transaction. Like, hey, we're going to get you an IP. We're going to put you through an IPO. Like, IPOs were crazy then. You're going to do IPO. We're going to do a merger acquisition. But you would kind of talk to the associates. They had no idea what their clients were doing. And I'm like, if I'm coming here, like, I want to know what the tech's all about. I did an assignment for this associate, and I forget her name. And it was a disaster. I did some agreement and it was horrible. And she marked it up in the red pen. And I'm like, there's no way I'm getting this job. But the deal was she sat down with me for 3 hours and walked me through everything I did wrong or right or whatever. She just spent the time with me. And that's when I knew that was the practice I wanted to join, the technology transaction practice, deals between companies when they want to exchange or build technology. You sit with a lot of engineers, you sit with a lot of high caliber business people building deals. And that's when I knew. And I was fortunate enough to get an offer after that summer for full-time employment afterwards. Then I was kind of off to the races at that point.
And so how do you, as an attorney with a very full life and in a demanding career, how do you learn what you need to learn about the technology so that you can converse appropriately with engineers, with executives in companies, perhaps with CEOs, perhaps with founders companies? How does one do that?
You don't have to have a technical background. I was a history major, right? So, many people will look at me and no matter what I do and say, who are you? Like, you can't do this. Like, what are you doing? A lot of time, like, if you have a solid foundation of certain technology, those new and improvements are just a step above. So there are nuances and there are differences as technologies improve, but it's always building on the foundation. And so there was, when I was at the firm, there's this incredible attorney, and she would teach a class to the new attorneys saying, like, you can do any agreement based on 4 basic agreements, like an NDA, professional services agreement, software license agreement, one other agreement. You can construct any type of agreement you need based on this core foundation. And it's true, it worked, in terms of dealing with engineers, a couple of thoughts. When an engineer comes to you about a project, this is a default of all attorneys. You're doing risk assessment, like good, bad, 0, 1, oh, this will never get off the ground. And that's okay, and that's part of what you do. But you never tell an engineer that you never tell them that their baby is ugly, right? Because this is someone that has poured their passion into it, and they're coming to you because they need you to help solve a problem. And if you're open and you're honest, but you help them get through an engineer's like anyone else. Like, I want someone committed to work through the problem. I think about when I was catching up with an engineer that I used to work with. He was at Meta for a while, and he took some time off. I was in a very difficult position. He had had a difficult time with another attorney on the team, and he'd gone to our supervisor and said, I need someone else. My supervisor said, okay, Beau, I need you to jump in. And our very first meeting, he's explaining this super complex technology and business plan that he's trying to put together. And I said, you know what? Like, let's talk about this in terms of baking a cake. What are our ingredients? What does our oven look like? What are we doing with the results of this cake? What kind of icing are we doing? And so converting a complex topic into something that we can mutually understand, it helped a lot. And show no fear.
I want to get back to that strategy of kind of reduction, right? In a minute, but I had this anecdote that popped into my head. I remember that you and I at one point had gone to a football game together. And at the time you were working with a company that was piloting this or trying to get this product off the ground that was like a portable TV, right? That was, and like it never took off, or maybe the technology morphed into something else. But then, and I remember people going, "Oh, that's the dumbest idea. Like, who would want to have a screen that's like this big when you could just get a big plasma TV?" So I just always chuckle about that because I'm like, great idea, maybe a few years too early, maybe because it wasn't integrated with a phone. That was it.
That technology, let's call it out because there are great people in San Diego who worked on it. Flow TV, Media Flow is the company. This notion of, hey, we're going to stream content over, over the airwaves to your mobile device, either as a portable device, the same handle on a portable device, or a phone. The phone was the first one. And I'll say 10 years too soon, right? Because today we could not imagine not being able to stream to a portable device. I think when I look at my career and what I do, like, what keeps me going is I get to work on the cutting edge of technologies, things that brilliant people dream up, and I play a small part in helping them bring that forward. And sometimes it's too early, sometimes it lands. It's fun. It's really fun.
So I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, you mentioned AI.
Yeah.
And it's obviously front of mind for just about anybody today, and certainly in my field of education. In fact, I just had an interview in the last couple of days that's going to come out in a week or so with an author who wrote the leading book on AI in the classroom and how teachers can leverage artificial intelligence, specifically language learning models like a ChatGPT type of model to empower students, but also at the same time keep kids safe. And it's complicated and it changes every day. What is your work? I know there's a lot you can't talk about specificity-wise in terms of your work, but just philosophically, what does your work look like in the area of AI, and what should a layperson like me be thinking about in this space?
Yeah. So I think it's okay for me to name companies. So for 10 years, I was at Qualcomm there in San Diego.
I was waiting for you to name them, but
That's fair. Totally fair. Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, we're good. So I was at Qualcomm for a very long time. And then I had an opportunity to join, at the time, what was known as Facebook, now known as Meta. And I was brought on, as a standalone attorney to work on deals related to artificial intelligence. To that point in time, I'd done one AI deal, worked on thousands of deals, but only one AI. But, as I was kind of describing, technology will constantly evolve. And as long as you have that solid foundation, you can tackle anything. That's been my experience. Should also say all this is my opinion, not necessarily the opinion of my company, insert legal disclaimer. And so when I joined Facebook, I did a lot of deals that related to partnerships between companies related to AI. Either we needed technology that we needed to license from someone else, or we were licensing AI out. And that was kind of, I did that. I've done other things. I've supported other groups related to mobile, groups related to connectivity. Um, I've built out a team that I support, related to AI, also now related to strategic alliances. But AI has always kind of been my constant during my time here. And then, like everyone else, it just exploded. When OpenAI came along with ChatGPT, it was like nitro in the engine and everything took off. A lot of people talk about, a lot of people are nervous, understandably, with new technologies. I think what most people would say is exciting is to have this very powerful technology in the hands of people and creators to do really cool things. Like when I think about your podcast, if you invite me back in a year, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to say, hey, Dave, the questions you generated, did you use ChatGPT? Did you run our last interview through? Did you run my LinkedIn profile through and use ChatGPT to at least create the starting point? I might ask you, hey, like in post-production, did you use an AI tool to generate a transcript of the conversation? Or did you use AI to create a version of our conversation in voices that sound like us speaking in German or in Spanish to expand your user base? And if you come back to me and say, yep, Beau, I did it, and I pay the extra $50 a month for those services to expand the reach of my podcast because either I've got new customer or new listeners or new advertisers because these tools enhance my business, I would say like, wow, like this technology has really taken off, and it's doing what people expect, or what people are anticipating today. But it's still super early. It's very early.
It's early, and what's interesting to me is I think like a lot of people naively thought that AI was going to be changing society kind of from the most repetitive types of manual work, or like data entry, clerical kind of jobs first, or long haul truck drivers or what have you. And it is transforming that, but it's also having an amazing impact on a lot of white collar work.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I have a friend who's an attorney, and he's like, yeah, I use ChatGPT every day when crafting the first draft of a letter to a client, or when analyzing notes from a meeting that have 50 bullet points in them and disorganized thinking. Like I use ChatGPT to scrub that and bring it to me. And then there's amazing things like that companies are building in as functionality that you don't even know it's coming until it comes. Like I now just started, in preparation for in the future, I'd like to have a video component as well in this podcast. I just have to find a suitable background office.
Totally.
But so I started to post the episodes on YouTube. Well, YouTube has built-in functionality where you post an audio, and I didn't even know this, but it already transcribes it for you.
Yes.
And has sound markers along the way. Every time a different speaker speaks or the theme changes, there's a little play thing you can hit, and you can, it'll say, Beau's talking about AI here. You can hit that and it'll jump down in the audio to that section. And we didn't pay for that. That's just, YouTube's got that baked in. And so I think those are really interesting things. When you mention the way that you explained a complex deal and reduced it down to making a cake, I feel like, and maybe I'm oversimplifying things, but I feel like that's the space in which humans will always be able to still live and operate in an agile manner where a machine can't, right?
Yes.
If you took this complicated thing and you said, hey, bro, can you give me 15 minutes? And you plugged it in ChatGPT and said, hey, reduce this down to a basic fourth grader's understanding of the concepts. Like, yeah, okay. But that's not how your conversation went down, right? You lost him already. He's not going to want to work with you anymore. And so I think the beauty of it is that you understand the whole picture of this big deal and the complexity. And then you're like, okay, we got to get to like the basics first. And that's a human instinctual move right in the middle
Yes.
of a dynamic situation.
Yes. Yes. No, totally agree. But the technology is also amazing. Like like yes, there are nuances. There will be different sets of skills that I think that people will bring to the table that a machine will never be able to replicate. And that's kind of the exciting thing. Like I love hearing what you were sharing with about where you're seeing AI pop up in your life. I love looking at kids and seeing how they're using it, how it's influencing their lives, how they're kind of tweaking what the older generation offers. And I kind of looked at them and I'm like, that's good. That's going to be really cool. When that use, that form of technology or AI would be amazing. And it's true for all technology. Like you got your mobile phone, and I'm going to take pictures, I'm going to record video, but you look at these kids and these creators and the way they use these phones, how much that's advanced technology. I think it's true for all technology, and it's cool. It's exciting.
I'm sure that it's going to transform. It's hard to even characterize the legal profession as one
Sure.
homogeneous profession because it's has such variety, right? But I'd imagine just like in accounting and in all these, medicine is going to be transformed. The law must in the future, right? Even what you described from law school, I'm wondering if the Socratic method, this is a rhetorical question, but like I'm wondering if the Socratic method is really going to need to be so hammered in law school preparation into people's minds. You talk about boot camp in year one of law school. Like, is that really, how many times does Beau get grilled on the job by someone who's like, right now I need an answer on this? You know what I mean? Like,
every day.
Oh, do you?
Every day. So your point well taken. I think, law school and the Socratic method,
Yeah.
Hell Week with Navy SEALs,
Yeah.
Residency for medical students.
Yeah.
Yes, this is an opportunity to learn how things work, but it's more importantly, I'm training you. I'm training you to think or operate in a certain way, because in your life, in your professional career, you're going to face situations where what you've learned is not applicable to the situation. And what you will have to fall back on is your training, your ability to improvise and operate in difficult situations. So first year law school, I'm pounding the crap out of you. It's really difficult. It's stressful. You're working with subject matter you have no understanding about. Fast forward to your first year as a young associate. Partner walks into your office Friday, 4 o'clock. I need a memo, throws a piece of paper, throws a report, sends an email. I need this summarized. I need a memo on this. I need an agreement on this by Monday morning. Like I literally think back to the associates. We were in a little broom closet when I first started. That training, like that's hard to replicate.
But can AI do some of that? So like AI could get the memo going and a draft agreement, right? Not the final one.
Absolutely. But just like any tool.
Yeah.
Email communications. Like we remember in our lifetime when we started using email, and now we couldn't imagine living without it. There were partners I worked for, when the first computer showed up in the office, it was revolutionary, but it was another AI we're thinking about, kind of ChatGPT, which is just one sliver because there's so much other stuff. It's a tool.
Yeah.
I think those who are skilled at being able to prompt AI to produce desired results, like that's amazing. That's a skill set that, but this, like, yes, you can go in many places and I'm probably going to be wrong, AI might go wherever, but in the end, it's a tool. And we humans, from the beginning of time are very good at manipulating and using tools for desired outcomes.
Henry Kissinger and one of the founders of Google, whose name I'm going to blank on, and one other author, just came out with a book on AI. I'm not sure Henry Kissinger actually wrote it, but his name's. But they start out the book by talking about, this computer. I think it might be an IBM computer originally, but Big Blue. That was, and it was like the chess computer, right? And it was like they developed this thing over years, and eventually it got to where it could beat the top chess champions in the world and could beat them resoundingly because it could just do millions and millions of calculations a second, right? And then at some point, they had this, and I don't know all the technical terms, but similar to a chat GPT or a language, a learning model, like a model that could learn, and they pitted it against that computer. And in the beginning, it lost a bunch of times, but then it started to behave like it started to almost develop its own independent mind around doing things that were illogical, things that a computer that had been programmed to cut risk out of its game never would have done.
Yes.
And watching this thing go, and in a day or two, it was dominating Big Blue.
Yeah.
And I think that's the piece that I think we're going to be wrestling with a long time. Clearly, that model doesn't feel emotion. It doesn't feel fatigue. It doesn't feel frustration. It doesn't have an ego. It doesn't. But oftentimes, it can behave in a way where we start ascribing it human qualities, and that's going to be really interesting. Maybe the next generation of kids, the kids who are being born right now, are going to grow up in a world where, just like kids today never imagined not having a cell phone, the next generation's never going to know what it's like to not have these models that are adapting and learning, and hopefully, for the most part, making the world better.
No, absolutely. No doubt, AI represents a very powerful tool, very powerful technology, and people are fast. I mean, that's what's kind of blown my mind away, is just how fascinated and interested people are, rightfully or wrongfully, but there are lots of different reasons. And it's, I think we're fortunate, I feel very fortunate to work during this time, to be exposed to this technology, to have a decent understanding of it. AI is also very broad. Most people are very familiar with large language models, but there's so many other technologies within AI that will provide us with really cool tools through our lives. It's exciting, but it's, the guys who worked on mobile, like that was exciting also. Electric cars, the work we're doing around climate change. I think we're just very fortunate during this time in our lives to be around these great advancements. It's cool.
How can schools better teach and prepare students for a job like yours in the future?
This will go back to your earlier point. If there's any kid or any young person who's listening to this conversation and said, like, wow, Beau said something, it really motivates me, I want to be a technology licensing attorney, or I want to focus in AI. Even if you're in law school right now, maybe if you're a junior associate, I'm going to tell you it's too late.
Yep.
Like the next wave of technologies that will need the skills that I utilize as part of my job, they're just like that spark is just going off in someone's head, and it will pass AI. It will be the next wave of technologies. So I answer that question. I want to answer that question in a way like, don't focus on the technology where you are, because your skills will be needed at the next level. To answer your question directly in terms of schools, when I look at my own experience, what can educators do? It's continuously building that foundation. I'm a big fan, we kind of talked about this throughout the conversation, but also earlier, in a safe way, but exposing people to adversity and challenges. The teachers I remember are the ones who kicked my butt in school. Mr. Perry, 10th grade biology. Like, I didn't think I was going to get out, and I was so happy with a B+. And I couldn't tell you a lick about biology today, but it was the experience of working hard through adversity, not for that subject matter, but as a basis for the next time I faced adversity. Professor Walmuth, USD, this guy's insane, smartest guy I've ever met. But you know what? I worked through it. He turned out to be a good guy, and I learned how to navigate it. If you come to work in my area, or just the law in general, clients come to you because they've got a problem and they need someone who's really smart to help them solve that problem. And a lot of times, sometimes, not all areas of the law, but many times, those problems have never been seen before, or the facts are very unique. What experiences can you draw on to solve this problem? And I think, that's an important part of education. That's an important area that educators serve. I also think exposing young people to different people in their community, like you're doing with this podcast, I remember what it was like as a kid, and speakers would come like in one ear, out the other. But you never know when that day is going to happen, when the right kid is listening to the right speaker and something will change their life. And I think that educators, you have to be persistent in that, because it makes such a difference. And it might be, if it's 1 out of 24, 1 out of 30, whatever your class size is, and it makes a difference in that kid's life, totally worth it. Like no matter every Friday I do, you do this, and totally worth it. Makes a world of difference. And I think I'll stop talking on this one, answering a question, but like in terms of pure subject matter, when I look at my own kids, they don't understand the technologies that they interact with. Difference between Wi-Fi and cellular. Why does my Wi-Fi work at home, but it doesn't work when I drive around? What does it mean to have one of these phones? How do these companies make all this money when I have this phone? What do these terms mean when I click yes or no?
Who wrote this long agreement that my dad
did? At some point in my career, I wrote it. But it's, as we talked about the challenges of AI, the challenges of any technology, I think that we don't do unless you're specialized, we don't do a good job of understanding like how it works.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to be able to build it, but there are people in our communities who are able to teach that at a level so that you can conceptually understand what's going on. And I think that's what makes me sad about my kids. When I talk to my kids about the apps they use, I'm like, hey, does it like bug you, that you're like uploading all these pictures, or you're doing this and doing that, and they say it disappears, but like it can still be captured. Like, do you like think about it? Nah, it's cool. Like, really? Like, no one cares what I'm doing. I'm like, all right, man. Like, right? Do you know what I do all day? That kind of thing. That would be the last thing I would recommend.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. My mom is one of these people who was like 30, 40 years ahead of her time. And she founded an organic food co-op in our living room in 1975. Wow. that if she waited 10 years, could have been the start of Whole Foods. And
yes,
we'd be doing this call for my private jet or whatever. But one of the things that she did was she had this thing, like she was very careful about what technology I could be exposed to as a kid, because her theory was that it would take away my creativity if a machine would do something for me. So I remember I desperately wanted to get a radio, and I was like 10, 11 years old. And so for Christmas one year, I get a crystal radio kit from Radio Shack. A do-it-yourself, build your own kit. And my grandfather and I sat and welded this thing together. And her whole thing was like, you want a radio? You got to build it.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And then that's how I got into, and I remember it only had AM and didn't have a speaker. It had one little earbud for one ear.
Yeah.
But I learned how to build, the very, very basics of a radio. But I was like, oh, I get it. Okay, this is how this works. And I've just been thankful for that over the years, because especially as consumer electronics have become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and more disposable, where your device doesn't even matter anymore. It's whatever's in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
I don't care if you steal my laptop. Like, unlike Hunter Biden, I don't care. because everything's in the cloud anyway, right?
Yeah,
And I'm not even giving second thought to what goes into this device.
yeah.
What role do you think creativity has, Beau? Like creativity and imagination. I mean, full disclosure, like you and I first met when both of our kids our kids in both families were in Waldorf schools, and that's a kind of a fundamental tenet of Waldorf education: creativity, awe, wonder. Um, what role should that play in a successful person and a successful professional's life, do you think?
I would say it's probably the most important characteristic. I was having a couple stories. So I was having a conversation with my son. He's all first year law school. He's in a STEM program, and first year, so it's hard. So I'm loving it. I'm like, yeah, it's hard. Like that's what I want to hear. It's just like, Dad, this is really tough. Like I don't understand. And I was just talking. I'm like, I suggested to you, because you have this natural inclination towards mathematics and sciences, to go into engineering, because you're good at it, and engineers are very good at problem solving. There's a very important methodology and skill set that you'll learn, and even though you don't necessarily have to become an engineer, but you'll learn these skills. And I said, I know you will excel at this because you're a charismatic, likable. There is depth, there is creativity to who you are. I can walk into his room and he's got hundreds of the most complex Lego sets that he's built. And it's just those things. So that's one, personally, like where I see it important. When I hire attorneys, I don't care where you've gone to school. Maybe I care a little bit about your firm, but I really want to know how you solve for the unknown. I really want to get in there and test your ability to creatively solve problems. Because I know when you come work on my team, someone's going to sit in front of you, the most brilliant, rocket scientist, PhD, amazing engineer is going to sit down in front of you with a white sheet of paper or the back of a napkin and say, I need to construct a deal around this. And more than just constructing a deal around this, I need you to predict the future in terms of what could go wrong with respect to this deal, and protect me and the company with what could go wrong. It's unknown technology and an unknown possibility. And no school, no experience can teach to that, but it's your creative mind with the training you have that will help you get there. So 100% behind creativity. It's what's needed at that cutting edge,
It's such an interesting theme that I didn't anticipate would keep cropping up in these podcast interviews. And I've been asked from time to time from staff who I work with, well, why do you spend time on this podcast? Like, how does that connect to our lives and our jobs? And I'm like, well, so if and when you decide to actually listen to an episode or two, you'll see that it directly applies.
Yes.
Educators should be reflecting upon and wrestling with the concept of creativity and critical thinking, and the difference between creative problem solving and just mad chaos. That's
right.
Yeah, and what true collaboration means, and where you take a stand, and where you compromise. All these different pieces, like those Absolutely. That's we were reflecting on. I spoke to a couple different people on here, and I was talking to a journalist the other day about 9/11. And that after 9/11, the federal government hired screenwriters. The CIA hired screenwriters to help predict future possible attack, because it turns out that somewhere in some bad, there's only been about 10 million movies made about destroying New York and LA, right?
Right.
In one of those, someone flew a plane into a hijacked the plane and flew it into a building, and the fuel was what destroyed the building. So, that was a screenwriter that nobody paid attention to at the time.
Yeah.
It's really a fascinating thread. I want to pivot a little bit. And first, I want to thank you, Beau, really for your time. You've been very generous, and I'm always aware of and thankful for guests for taking time out of their day. I want to pivot a little bit to your family, your family story. your LinkedIn profile and what I know of you personally indicates that a central part of your energy and thought and work is going towards advocacy around rare diseases.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you could share with us a little bit about your journey and your family's journey in that area.
Absolutely. No, thank you for asking. It is, this experience has defined so much of who I am. I think, just turned 50, you go through midlife and you have this moment, you're like, what's my purpose? Why am I here? I'm halfway done. Like, what will be my mark?
Yeah, you're halfway done if you've been eating your vegetables.
Right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Hopefully thinking. And I don't know if I want to go the full balance 50. But 10 years ago, my daughter Maya, she was diagnosed with a rare disease. It's a disease, the broader category is called Batten's disease. She has a specific type called CLN2 Batten's disease, or more specifically, she has the atypical type. I'll kind of break all this down. So Batten's disease is a lysosomal storage disorder. And, flashback to biology, Mr. Perry's class, if you will, you have the different organelles within a cell, and one of them is the lysosome. And the lysosome is responsible for recycling waste that's in a cell. And so Maya she inherited a genetic defect that causes her lysosomes to not produce enough of a certain enzyme to break down waste materials. And so over time, her cells, in particular her neurons, get sick and they die. And when neurons die, it impacts your brain. And there's some theories, but they generally don't reproduce. They don't regenerate. And so 10 years ago, my mom, the nurse, said, hey, when Maya's walking, she seems a little kind of off balance. You guys should go get this checked out. Like any parent is like, like really? 30 years nurse, like you follow up on this. So make an appointment. It takes a long time to get the appointment with a specialist. You have to go to a pediatrician. They're like, I don't see anything. We take it to the neurologist. We're down at Rady's actually. We go into Dr. Leshner was the guy who diagnosed mommy or told us there was an issue with Maya. We go in for this appointment. He does these really basic tests: touch your nose, walk heel toe, just real basic stuff, and just 100% clear that she is having a really difficult time with these very basic things. That's when we knew something was up. We then wound up working with the Dr. Friedman there, who actually got us to our diagnosis. And in the rare disease community, something happens and there's a problem. So for us, it was ataxia and Maya's problems with walking. Traditionally in Batten's disease and the type we deal with, it's the kids will have seizures. The doctors will try to treat seizures, but the medication doesn't quite take. And you go through like a battery of tests, and eventually someone says, let's do genetic sequencing. So another big San Diego company, Illumina, they brought down the cost of genetic sequencing. I tell anyone, I'm not a doctor, but I tell anyone, like, something's going on, no matter what they say, go get genetic sequencing. If you're kind of concerned, knock that out. It's not expensive. Most insurance covers it. And that's when we came back with like, hey, Maya's got the defects for Batten's disease, CLN2 Batten's disease. However, when you look up this form of Batten's disease, the known cases, the vast majority of cases are kids between the age of 4 and then they pass away when they're 12. Maya was, 10, 11, and not at the tail end. And so we're like, what's going on? Like, she's a little bit different. And there was this one article that we were given about a Dutch family who had older kids, near adults, with this form of Batten's disease. We're like, we're not Dutch. Like, what's going on? Like, what? So, there wasn't at the time when we were immediately diagnosed, there was not a treatment. We would go to people and say, we'd go to conferences like, hey, we're here, we're representing our daughter. She has CLN2 Batten's disease. She's 11 years old. And they're like, what are you, like, fake Batten's? Like, she's too old. Like, they can't, like, horrible stuff.
What did they
And
think you?
so
They were thinking you just didn't know what you were talking about.
I had someone tell me, like, what do you have to faith balance? Like a very prominent person in the community said that.
Jeez.
That was pretty devastating. That was pretty devastating. And so initially, a lot of the work that Suzette, my wife, and I did was finding other families with this form of abstinence. Because when you find other families, you can come up with natural history, you can be accepted and get access to treatments. And so we spent a lot of time finding other families. Right now we're up to like 35-ish, and you imagine Maya was the third case published with this disease.
Third public case out of 7 billion.
Exactly. And we had to find 33 others, and we found them. And that was massive for us because at the time, we call them the classic ones, for the younger kids with this form of Battle's disease, there was a treatment called enzyme replacement therapy, where the companies developed a synthetic form of the missing enzyme, and the plan was to inject it into the kid's brain to slow down the progression. And so we had heard about this, but we had this outlier form of the disorder, and to be eligible, we had to educate researchers. Like, nope, we're here, we're part of the community, like we need to be a part of this. So a lot of people in San Diego might be like, we did this massive campaign fighting for Maya. A lot of that was raising awareness, funding other types of research, like getting the word out there. I was very, that was part of the, my career always helped with this, but at the time when I was at Qualcomm, I supported the marketing team. And being around creative marketers, you learn how to get your message out there. And that helped a lot with fighting for Maya. So Maya was a part of the compassionate use program. So she got pretty early access. That was another fight. We can do another podcast on how you get that going. She's been on this treatment for 7 years. It has slowed the progression. It has not stopped it. It's not a cure. She can't walk on her own. She can't eat on her own. Speech is very difficult to understand if you haven't been around her, but she's sharp as a whip. Like she will call you out, just like any 20-year-old will do. And so we're very fortunate. But we're also, what is the next technology? My wife has taken on, heroically, the FDA, where
she's got your lawyer skills may come in handy.
No. So everyone talks about the lawyer skills. It is the spouse of a lawyer.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So the latest generation of technology, gene editing, gene therapy, amazing breakthrough. The inventor, I think she won the Nobel Prize this year. There's a lot of promise, and there are treatments available. The FDA has not approved these treatments in the United States. So you see these companies taking it abroad. So the next technology we need to prove that it's safe, And so the next round of technology that we need is currently being tested on a little boy in Brazil. And I say tested, it's being treated, but it's being tested to get the FDA comfortable. And so Suzette speaks on a lot of panels at the FDA, with the FDA, helping them understand that, since we are dealing with a progressive terminal disorder, we are educated and capable of making difficult decisions about access to treatments for our child. And it's a tough one, but she's doing amazing work, along with many others, amazing work to get those treatments available. So.
Well, I thank you for sharing that. I do remember the Fight for Maya T-shirts and
Yes.
hashtag, and thank you for. It's very humbling to hear just what you've gone through, and while you're fighting on that front, both of you are keeping your family together, and you've got other kids, and
yes.
Father time keeps ticking on, and life keeps moving.
That's right. That's right. But I
So,
will say, David, it all ties back together, right? Like the skills as a lawyer, someone walks in front of you and says, I have this insurmountable problem that you've never dealt with. Like, all right, yeah, let's go deal with that in the rare disease. Like, hey, I've got, a grumpy researcher or doctor who doesn't want to talk to you. Like, no, I'm used to speaking in front of people with power or convincing or persuading them. Um, but it all starts on, like, I always go back, building those skills over time. So when you get to that difficult situation, you're prepared to deal with it. So that's my thought there.
what do you know now, professionally or personally,
Mm.
that you wish you'd known? Let's take you back, I don't know, 30 years when you were 20. What do
Yeah.
you know now? What does the 50-year-old Beau say to the 20-year-old Beau? Other than don't sell your Apple stock.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. Um, Kind of two thoughts. The first one is not neither is original. The first one is definitely not original because I recently heard someone say it and it just resonates. It's not a straight path.
Mhm.
Um, and in not being a straight path, you will not always know which direction you're headed or what's around the corner. Um, and you have to be comfortable with that. Um, and that's okay. And maybe you're making a lot of lefts and right. Maybe you're taking steps backwards. you know, Maybe it's, alien chess. So you're taking steps down, you're taking steps up, but that's an important component of life and career. Um, the other important lesson, and this was never really like an issue with me because I always think I get along well with people, but I've seen people have problems with this. This is advice I received from someone who was in law school when I was still right after graduation, but just the importance of relationships and how you treat others. Um, your professionally and personally, but especially professionally, your reputation can be made or broken in an instant based on your first interaction with someone. You know, if you're a jerk, we all know the jerks. If you're a jerk, you can be toasted. Your entire career, everything you've done could go up in flames. So it's so important to treat people. This is what I say to myself. So important to treat people the way you want to be treated. When people ask me, like, hey, but what's your management style? Just one thing: treat people, manage people in the way that I would want to be managed. And it's so important. It's probably the most important lesson.
And that goes for in person and digitally.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
and I think the latter becomes much harder because that the courage wall uh, seems pretty strong when you're
Yeah.
on your keyboard somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had an incident like that yesterday. Yeah, let me just figure out how to say it. It was a personal incident where someone was cavalier in the use of language. Um,
Yep.
and they got an angry dad response, and this angry dad happened to be a lawyer in response. And as you said, kind of that digital screen, like, no, I need you to pick up the phone and call me and have a conversation with me so that we can talk this through. Um, Absolutely.
I there's I know there's some companies. I think BP was one of them. British Petroleum. I don't know if they do it anymore, but they used to have a policy where you could be terminated if you sent an email or an internal chat or like Slack or something
Mm-hmm.
to someone that could have been handled in a phone conversation
Oh,
or
sure.
a face to face.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about sending them a template of a contract that you're working on, but for to something, especially around contentious things, human
Absolutely.
things.
Absolutely.
It's like,
I mean, and going back to your earlier question, in terms of educators, and I don't think this is an issue, but just the importance of interpersonal communication, interpersonal contact, dealing with others. You hear a lot of stories about young boys losing that ability to interact and have those interpersonal moments and navigate those. People are reporting it's a real problem for our society, and you see that. Yes, that's probably a downside of technology. Um, it's a downside of, just how we live today. But it's just, it was an important skill set for my mom. I remember her talking about it. It's a key skill set now. Super important.
So you've obviously accomplished a lot in your life professionally. Oftentimes when we're applying to a new job or we're asked to be on a panel or whatever it is, people ask for a resume, and so we list all our accomplishments, and that oftentimes or almost always is things that are in the past. So I'm going to flip that a little bit to the concept of an anti-resume. In other words, the gaps, the holes on your resume. What's at least one thing that's on your anti-resume, i.e. something you would still like to learn, to do, to experience?
I think my response will surprise you a little bit. So I just, super fortunate at work. After a period of time, you're given this extended amount of time to take a break, very much like a sabbatical. And at some point during the sabbatical, towards the end, my wife came to me and said, "You know what? You've been home a lot. Really not a lot to do. And I think we could do a business together." And I'm like, all right, I think that bodes well for us, but like that was a good affirmation. And what I think an idea we kick around a lot, one, we're kind of very much interested in getting away from big cities, probably California. And I want to also include my kids, so that they have a business for themselves. But we've been, we're kind of kicking around this idea of buying a lot of land, having horses, but setting up really kind of a physical therapy center for people with neurological challenges. So one of the things Maya does, part of her therapy is she does equine therapy. And the pace of the horse, the movement of the hips, it helps support your ability to walk and engage in your system. We're very fortunate. There's a center, it's like very close to us, but there aren't enough of these. And so Suzette and I have talked a lot about doing that elsewhere in the country, somewhere back east. So I'm like, all right, like maybe I'll take some night classes, learn how to become a PT. We'll go start a business, and give that a try. So that's kind of the anti-resume thing. I mean, people, very early in my career, I took one of these kind of tests that assesses, what does your personality type, what profession does your personality type align with? Like out of 100, lawyer was like 45. Number one was farmer, like 100%, like above and beyond, super clear. You should be a farmer. Wow. So, at some point I'll stop ignoring.
Wow. Yeah. And those tests are funny. I took one when I was in high school. I might have said this on a different episode, but I took one in high school that was a pencil and paper one. We're talking about like 1984 or something.
Yeah.
And of all of the things that came back, mine came back something that I don't even think people know what it is. It's a soda jerk. It's the guy in the soda fountain who pulls the lever.
Yes. To
fill the soda, your root beer sarsaparilla float back on Main Street in small town America. And I've never forgotten that. And I don't drink soda. And I mean, I guess I must have put something down in there that I'm socially awkward and I'd like to serve others, and maybe so anyway, soda jerk came out. So I think you're on a much better path from your career assessment than I don't think soda fountains don't exist anymore. So
did they exist in 84? Like, were they still around?
I think my school was using assessments from the 60s.
That's right.
I think it was some old dusty thing that the counselor was like, "Oh, part of my job is to do career assessment."
Yes. No.
I remember that. And peoples were coming out with really cool professions. Like, "Oh, I'm going to be an engineer." And they're like, "You're going to be on soda jerk." So
I'm glad you ignored it. I'm glad you ignored it.
Well, even if I'd wanted to, I don't think I could pursue that job. So those things is so that's pretty funny. Is there anything before I ask my last question? Is there anything that we have not touched on today, Beau, that you would like to add to this conversation? It's been a real pleasure. I appreciate your candor and your openness and your thoughtfulness. Is there anything that we haven't touched on?
I don't think so. One, thank you for having me. It's great to chat with you. We haven't spoken in a long time. Thanks for inviting me. You know, I'm very open to feedback. So like if your listeners, Beau, you said this, what does it mean? I'd love to come back and chat again and follow up. And, this is fun. This
Yeah.
is, I appreciate the opportunity to just, share my experience. So many did that for me, and like, hopefully I'm able to do that for others.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And are you still mountain biking?
No, I'm all Peloton,
Oh,
all
okay.
like the whole deal of not having to pack up and go somewhere. It's like, okay, I've got 20 minutes. I'm going to go in the garage and I'll hit the bike.
And also the whole deal with not having to fall off.
I shared your story recently with a friend of mine.
When I turned 50, I thought it'd be a good idea to buy a new mountain bike and go out and mountain bike. And someone told me, a buddy of mine who'd mountain bike, said, you got to get the clip-in pedals, bro.
Oh
So
yeah.
I got clip-in pedals, and where I live, there's dozens of miles of dirt trails. And so it's been great, except that every time I go out, I fall.
Oh.
And then I had this humiliating experience where I fell on the side of the trail because you lose your speed and you can't unclip fast enough to go over. And I'm there and I'm tangled up in my bike, and a much younger female rider comes down the mountain, coming towards me, veers over to the side with a shocked look on her face, goes, sir, are you okay? Do you need help? And so after that, I took a little bit of a break.
Yes.
Maybe I need to do the Peloton. It sounds a much more efficient and safer way.
Although you do have to clip in and out. Like I will let you know, that's a major problem.
If I'm falling on that, then I just need to give up together. But maybe someday, we'll be able to meet in person to do episode 2.0. I could come up to LA, or if you're ever in San Diego, and we could grab a bite to eat and do episode 2.0. I'm going to finish with this question. This is something I put to all of the guests. You have the opportunity to buy a billboard on the side of the freeway. I don't know what the closest one to you is, the 5 or the 405, well, anyway, there's about 20 freeways near you. So the busiest freeway, you get the chance to put a billboard up that has Beau James's message about life, about work, about and anything you believe deeply in, and you've got about 3 seconds to convey that to motorists as they go by. What does your billboard say?
All right. I'm going to take your question, not answer it in the way you expect, and do it a little bit different. What I'm going to do with the billboard is tear it down. There are 2 states in this country, I believe there are 2 states where billboards are banned. Hawaii and Vermont. It makes a difference. Anything maybe I'm being too hoity-toity, but anything I could share on a billboard in 3 seconds isn't worth it. I'd like to sit down and chat with you for a couple of hours. And, let's talk about it. So
I think that's a fitting final point for today's conversation. And it brings back together those streams of divergent thinking and critical thinking and creativity. Awesome. So I appreciate that. I'm just glad you didn't turn around and go, what would you have on your billboard? I had one guest and he goes, I don't know, man, you really got me stumped. What would be on yours? And I'm like, I usually, if you know me off here, my language is peppered with words that probably shouldn't be on the side of the freeway sometimes. So I'm just glad I didn't drop any of those during this conversation. I remember this is young people listen to this. Yeah, I really do appreciate your candor and creativity and everything you do, and I'm honored that we had a chance to reconnect, and let's not let it be this many years that go by. Thank you for listening to the Superintendent's Hangout. You can follow me on Twitter at DVS1970. Please be sure to share this show with friends and family on social media and in the real world. Thank you to Brad Bacayal for editing and production assistance, and to Tina Royster for scheduling and logistics. Thanks for hanging out, and have a great day.